Hello again, this is Preheat. Welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Today we're going to be talking about Fire Mage in patch 11.1, and specifically we're going to cover Sunfury Fire Mage. This video is going to have everything you need to know, so that's going to be stuff like talents, stats, trinkets, gear, single target and AoE rotation, tips and tricks for Raid and Mythic Plus, and more. Everything that's included in this video is going to be timestamped, and also be aware that it is available on my Wowhead guide where I'm going to keep this information up to date. And also, if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I do offer this as well. All you have to do is click the link in the top right here. That's Metafy. And you can also go down to the description below to find that as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So what's changing in the patch? Well, obviously we have a new Raid and new Mythic Plus season, which means new gear and new tier bonuses. We also have some tuning for Fire Mage. I'm not going to go into all the little details, but essentially what they've done is they've increased the cooldown on Phoenix Flame and Pyroblast. And this is going to be offset a little bit by the new tier bonus and other factors. They've also done some tuning for Unleashed Inferno versus Sun King's Blessing, and also Frostfire and Sunfury have also received changes. Now let's talk about the talents for Sunfury. So for Raid, I'm going to recommend this talent build right here for most bosses. This has a nice mix of single target, it's your best single target setup, and it also has pretty decent cleave. Now, you can make a swap here if you want. You can take out Master of Flame and pick up Heat Shimmer. This is going to be about the same damage in single target, but you're going to have a harder time playing it because you're going to have to manage another buff. And you're also going to have to manage the improved Scorch debuff before execute, which is just a whole lot more work. And Master of Flame will just be better in AoE. So I don't really see any reason to ever pick this talent. When it comes to Mythic Plus, you're going to be running this build right here with one slight adjustment you can make. So you can take out this talent here and put it into Firefall if you prefer to just Pyroblast the whole time, although that will be less damage. But if you go for Fevered Incantation, this is a nice setup right here. Basically, what you're doing is you're taking an Ignite Living Bomb setup, and you also have essentially free access for Flamestrike. So this talent right here, you're going to have to take either Quick Flame or Convection to get to Mark of the Fire Lord, which you need since you're going Living Bomb and Blast Zone. So Convection is not a very good talent at all. It's really, really bad because it basically will never be active. Like, you're only going to have it active in pure single target. And on top of that, the damage gain you get in single target is very, very small. So there's really not a point to picking this talent, in my opinion. You should just go for Quick Flame. It is good to use Flamestrike above 5 targets. The damage increase is going to go up the more targets are added. We'll talk more about that later in the AoE portion, but essentially having the option to go Flamestrike, in my mind, is more valuable than any gain you could get from Convection, even in those short instances of single target. So either go with this setup here or Firefall. When it comes to gear and stats, it is always best to sim your own character using top gear to see whatever you have currently and how you can make it work for you. So yeah, sim your own character, but obviously haste is going to be your best stat, and then behind that, it's probably going to be mastery, and then versatility. Crit's probably your worst stat. If we look at a sim that basically has access to all the gear in the game, and we look at whatever is the best option with all those permutations, we are looking at having a very high haste amount, right? So this is 28,000 haste in the best in slot sim currently, and the runner-up here is 8,000 mastery. So that should give you an idea. Like, haste is just an insane stat, but obviously intellect is important too. You know, there's going to be situations where you don't equip a piece of gear with haste. Just sim your own character to know when it's going to be best to go with that haste piece as opposed to I'm level upgrade. All right, so here I am on my test character on the PTR, and as you can see, I have a lot of haste and then a bit of mastery here too. For my embellishment, I'm running the offhand with Ascension, and I'm doubling it with the Riding Armor Banding on the belt. And then when it comes to my tier bonus, Fire Mage tier bonus is just giving us more cooldown reduction on Combustion. And we're also getting a damage increase as well. So whenever we use our Combustion, we get 15% increased damage for 14 seconds. And then we also just get randomly these damage increases whenever we get the cooldown reduction on Combustion. So that's what the tier is doing for us. It's just giving us a lot more Combustion uptime, which is great because it means our Combustion cooldown is super duper short. The basics of Fire Mage is that you want to turn Heating Up into Hot Streak. That way you can spin it on instant cast Pyroblast or Flamestrikes. The spells we use to build Hot Streak are Fire Blast, Phoenix Flame, Scorch, and Fireball. Scorch only being below 30% or in Combustion, and Fireball for outside of Combustion. Spells we spin Hot Streak on are Pyroblast and Flamestrike. So essentially the spells on the left here are your builders, and the spells on the right are your spenders. In Combustion, every global cooldown is precious, so you want to try to prioritize using your defensives that take a GCD outside of Combustion, and you want to use the ones that are off the GCD like Alter Time and Ice Cold during Combustion. That way you can maximize the time in your combustion because every global counts. All right, now let's talk about the rotation. And we're going to start with the opener. So this is going to be the same Sunfury opener as you're used to, except for we're now going to use the Hyperthermia wrist wraps, but I'm going to cover it as if you haven't watched any of my previous videos, for those of you who are new. So before combat, make sure you use your barrier spell, and make sure you have Arcane Intellect. And then right before the pull, if you want to take less damage and also reduce the chance that you accidentally pull aggro by doing too much damage, you can bring out your mirror images. They make it so that you'll be basically immune to threat. And so what we're going to do from here is we're going to hardcast a Pyroblast. And this is the only hardcasted Pyroblast we're going to do the entire time that we're fighting the boss. And in fact, the hardcast will be before combat. So technically, we don't actually hardcast any Pyroblast in combat. It's important to note because if the boss is already pulled at this point, you should not be hardcasting this Pyroblast, okay? That's not something we do in combat. It is only something we do before combat begins. But anyways, as this Pyroblast finishes, I'm going to queue up a Phoenix Flame. And what's going to happen is both of these spells are going to fire off at the same time. So as long as you press your Phoenix Flame at the end of your cast here, like towards the end, you're like mashing it, it's going to basically shoot it out with this cast here. So right as this Pyroblast finishes, you can see the Phoenix comes out right here. So both of the spells are going to travel at the same time. And ideally, the timing is such that this is hitting the boss as the pull timer hits 0 and the boss is being pulled. Okay, so right here, boom, boss is pulled. Okay, so what's going to happen here is this Phoenix Flame is going to crit. So you're always going to have either a heating up or hot streak here. Yeah, so if the Pyroblast does not crit, okay, the hard cast I did, then what's going to happen is you're only going to have a heating up. It's not going to cancel out the heating up regardless of which one hits first or second, okay? Because there's a grace period on heating up and hot streak. So since one of those crit, we are guaranteed to have a heating up here. But in this case, the Pyroblast did crit, and I'm going to have a hot streak. So that can happen sometimes. It's just luck. I'll show an example where I don't get lucky. But either way, it's kind of the same idea. So from here, we're just going to cast a Fireball. And then as the Fireball is ending, we're going to press Combustion and cue the Pyroblast at the end that's instant cast because of the hot streak here. Now, if I had not gotten a crit on the opener, right? If I only had heating up here, I would need to press Combustion and Fireblast. And then that would give me the hot streak so I can cue it with the end of the Fireball. So make sure you have the hot streak here. Very important. Okay, so right here at the end, I'm going to press Combustion, and I'm going to cue the Pyroblast at the end. Now, by the way, I'm pretty good with this timing. If you're not as good with this timing because you just don't have the practice, do it a little sooner. Okay, sooner rather than later. You really don't want to do this late. I see a lot of people making this mistake in coaching. They will press their Combustion after the cast is finished. That's very bad. Make sure you press the Combustion cast before the cast is finished. Cut it close here if you're good at it, but make sure you do it before. Anyways, so right here, I'm going to cue the Pyroblast with the Fireball. So both of these, the Fireball and the Pyroblast, are both going to hit at the same time. And it's going to return a hot streak because they're both going to crit. Okay, so I can Pyroblast again. So it's double Pyroblast. That's what the double Pyroblast means, by the way, whenever people talk about that. It's because you're queuing two spells there. They're both going to crit at the same time, and then you do a second Pyroblast. Okay, and then from here, now we can start using Fireblast. So I'm already well on my way to going through the Fireblast here. You know, it happens really fast. So basically, you're just doing like Fireblast, Pyroblast, Fireblast, Pyroblast. Bit of a tongue twister. But you're alternating between those two. Now, on the last Fireblast, if you don't have a bunch of Fireblasts coming back, like you don't have like Glorious Incandescence, which is our Sunfury hero talent, it's this one right here. Whenever we use Brilliant Power, we get this buff where we get Fireblast coming back whenever these meteors come down. As long as we don't have something like this, you're going to want to use your bracers here on this last one. So I'm going to use the last Fireblast right here, and I'm going to bracer instantly. So what happens here is because I'm using the bracer after this Fireblast, you can see it happening right here in my cast sequence. Fireblast, Pyroblast, Fireblast. It's counting the last three spells before it was used, okay? So two of those spells are Fireblast. And if you look, notice how I had 0 Fireblast just a second ago. Now I have almost 3 again, right? This is the power of the Hyperthermia wrist wraps. It just fills your Fireblast right back up, okay? But you need to make sure that you used it with 2 Fireblasts in your last 3 spells. So if I screwed this up, and let's say I did like Pyroblast, Fireblast, Pyroblast, that would be bad. I only get half value in that case, right? Because it's only one Fireblast in that case. So no matter what you're using as your spender, it could be Flamestrike, right? Regardless of the situation, it needs to be 2 Fireblasts, and then you use the bracer, and then you can Pyroblast afterwards, obviously. So anyways, I'm just going to continue doing Fireblast, Pyroblast, alternating until I run out here. And that was my first Glorious Incandescence proc right there. So you're going to see a bunch of meteors falling in just a second. So what that does, again, hero talent for Sunfury, it's going to make it so that our Fire Blast can cleave additional enemies. But the important part here is that we're going to get meteorites, and all those meteorites are going to give us cooldown reduction. So you're going to see this refill my Fire Blast too. Watch in just a moment here. Now, while this is refilling, you need to buy time, right? So you need to either be like doing another spell. Maybe you like to run the Phoenix Flame in there, maybe a Scorch, something else. But, you know, you don't want to just be sitting here waiting for it to give you the Fire Blast back, because sometimes it takes a little bit for that to happen. But anyways, in this case, it was fine. It was during the global, so we're good. But yeah, I'm going to just continue doing Fire Blast, Pyroblast, Fire Blast, Pyroblast until I'm out again. Okay, so at this point, up until this point, this whole time, I've just been alternating between Pyroblast and Fire Blast, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, but at this moment, this is where we Phoenix Flame. This is where our first Phoenix Flame comes out. And basically what you do is, if you don't have the Fire Blast, then you do Phoenix Flame, and then you do the Pyroblast afterwards. Now, the cadence of this is a little slower, right? Because normally whenever you're doing the Fire Blast, Pyroblast back and forth, it goes really fast, right? Just to rewind here, show it again. Watch how fast they all come out, right? The Phoenix Flame is going to be half the speed, because instead of like using every global as a Hot Streak Pyroblast, you're using another global as a builder, and then you're doing the spinner afterwards. So here's the beginning, combustion, and then we're just alternating, right? Just blowing through those Fire Blasts, use the bracer. Glorious Incandescence proc gives me back Fire Blasts, burning through those, and then here's the Phoenix Flame. Okay, so if you don't have a Phoenix Flame or a Fire Blast to use, the next thing in line is Scorch, okay? But yeah, Scorch has no cooldown. You can just use it whenever. It is kind of the bottom of the barrel. Like, we don't really want to be scorching above 30%, so, you know, we only really use that if we have nothing else, but it's fine if we have to use it, okay? Just make sure that you use your resources being Fire Blast and Phoenix Flame before you use the Scorch. All right, so another example. So same idea on the opener, right? Hardcasting my Pyroblast using Phoenix Flame here, and then I'm going to begin my Fireball right here. And then, so in this case, I did not get a crit on my first Pyroblast, so I need to use Combustion and Fire Blast before this Fireball ends, and I need to queue a Pyroblast with Hot Streak as it ends as well. So right here, I Combustion, Fire Blast. I do a little sooner here since I need the Fire Blast too. But anyways, we're going to do the same idea, right? We're just going to blow through our Hot Streaks and then use Fire Blast as our builder here. So I'm just going to alternate using the bracers right there. Okay. And so right here, I'm at my first Phoenix Flame in this case. So I'm going to Phoenix Flame here. That buys me time for the Glorious Incandescence. I use a second Phoenix Flame right there. And now we're at the end, so I'm going to throw in the Scorch. Now, whenever you're scorching, you can actually use a Fire Blast during the Scorch and like queue a Hot Streak from the end of it. So that's what I'm doing right here. So I'm going to do Scorch, Fire Blast. And since I'm in Combustion, I'm going to do 2 Pyroblasts afterwards, right? Right there. 2 Pyroblasts in a row. So this is the double Pyroblast again. Okay. Now, as this is ending, my Combustion is going to turn into Hyperthermia right here. Okay, but right at the last second, I'm going to throw in this Phoenix Flame just to kind of get on cooldown, because I'm going to Shifting Power right after my Hyperthermia anyways to get cooldown reduction. So I just want to use like all my resources here, and that's going to refresh the Feel the Burn proc here too. Give me like something to do for that global. And then now I'm just going to be spamming Pyroblast here. Now, during Hyperthermia, which you're seeing ticking down here, you can use Fire Blast if you're capped out on it, or if you want to maintain Feel the Burn, or even better, if you want to get through your resources faster, that way you can Shifting Power sooner. And that's usually why I do it. So I will actually use a Fire Blast during my Hyperthermia, because Hyperthermia, even though it guarantees that every Pyroblast or Flamestrike that you do is going to crit, it does not guarantee a Hot Streak, okay? So it's still worthwhile for us to generate Hot Streaks. It's also worthwhile for us to re-up on our Feel the Burn proc right here. This buff, this comes from Phoenix Flame and Fire Blast. So it gives us more, you know, mastery, right? We're just keeping that at 3 stacks. And then most importantly, we're keeping our stacks down. We're using everything faster. That way, as soon as we exit this thing, we can use Shifting Power here. So I'm going to convert this heating up into a Hot Streak with the Fire Blast right there. That re-ups my Feel the Burn, as you can see. So this is 2 Hot Streaks in a row now. Then just continue along until the end here. Okay, and then I use the second one right there, because again, my goal is just to use this Shifting Power like as soon as I can. So I'm going to just use Phoenix Flame and Fire Blast here, Phoenix Flame, Fire Blast, and then Shifting Power. Now, I did get lucky with my CDR there, and I'm not going to get full cooldown reduction on this Combustion, but that's okay. The way that the sim actually does it when it comes to using shifting power is it looks for two different things. Either your combustion is 20 seconds out, or you have one Phoenix Flame. And if you have one Phoenix Flame, because of how the sim plays, that means that you have no Fire Blast. So basically, the logic on shifting power is if you're out of Fire Blast and you've already used one Phoenix Flame, or if your combustion is 20 seconds out, it's just going to rip that shifting power. But 9 times out of 10, the condition that actually triggers it, because I've actually broken it apart and seen which one it looks at most whenever it's playing in normal play, it's looking at the Phoenix Flame being at 1. That's the one that actually triggers it most of the time. So anyways, yeah, it's not exactly, efficient here to be using it whenever I have this little cooldown on combustion, but it's still proper to use it here. Still a damage gain. And I have tried it the other way around too to see if it would be different, but yeah, it just ended up being better this way. So anyways, shifting power is going to tick out here, and I'm going to get back Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames. And it's really important whenever you use the shifting power that you go into it without a hot streak, because sometimes you're going to need to use a Fire Blast during shifting power. And if that's the case, you really, really don't want to be in a situation where you can't benefit from that. Like you don't have the ability to like hold a hot streak because you're already holding one. So heating up is what you want, or just nothing, right? Either nothing or heating up, that's fine. But a hot streak, not so good. Anyways, so right here, I get a combustion proc. Super unlucky because I was already planning to like use combustion right here, and I didn't notice in time. But yeah, you do randomly get procs. They kind of troll you. Just ignore this proc. What you're going to do here normally, if you didn't get this proc, or if you can react fast enough, you're going to use combustion here, right? So I'm beginning the fireball. I'm going to press combustion here. And in this case, since I got the TA proc like literally less than a second before I pressed my combustion, I kind of trolled that TA proc. But either way, it's really hard to react this fast whenever you get like a random proc like as you're about to finish your precursor to pressing combustion. But yeah, so I'm going to turn this heating up into a hot streak right here, and I'm going to cue the Pyroblast. Double Pyroblast again. Pyroblast, Pyroblast. And then Fireblast, and then Pyroblast again. And yeah, there we go. So same idea, right? We're literally following the same priority as our previous combustion. So in combustion, again, just to repeat, it's Fireblast first priority, Phoenix Flame second priority, third priority is Scorch. And we're only using Scorch if we're in combustion or if the target is below 30%. And also if the target's below 30% and we have improved Scorch, this talent right here that we take for a single target, we do actually use Scorch as like a higher priority if the improved Scorch is about to fall. So keep that in mind. Scorch does jump up to the top of the list if you're trying to maintain your stacks of improved Scorch, but otherwise you can just ignore it. So anyways, we're just going to blast through this combustion here. Now, obviously you can jump around if you want. I'm going to get a Glorious Incandescence there, so I use a Phoenix Flame while I wait for my cooldown reduction. And then right at the end here, I'm going to have the Hyperthermia phase again. So going through Hyperthermia. In this case, I don't have any Fire Blast to like re-up this Field of Burn, so it's going to fall. That's fine. Yeah, so just Pyroblasting here. And now we are at the end of our combustion. Now you might be wondering what you do outside of combustion. And the beauty of patch 11.1 and the new tier bonus is that there isn't really that much time between combustions. There isn't really too much of outside of combustion. So there are a couple things you're going to do. Obviously, shifting power is one of the top on the list, right? If you have shifting power available, try to blow through your Fire Blast and Phoenix Flame. So maybe if you don't have a hot streak, you just do like Phoenix Flame, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, Phoenix Flame, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, shifting power. And if you don't have shifting power, you're just going to throw out a couple fireballs. And maybe one of them crits, maybe it doesn't. But if it looks like you're about to cap out on Fire Blast, try to queue up a Phoenix Flame at the end of one of those fireballs. And that way you can immediately use a Fire Blast if you didn't get a crit on the fireball. And if you did, then obviously you can just, use a Pyroblast right afterwards. But you just want to basically get to that next combustion as soon as possible. Unless something goes horribly wrong or you like die and you have to get res, you really shouldn't be in a situation where you just don't have a combustion for a long time, because you build up so much cooldown reduction in between your combustions by just like spending your cast during the combustion, so that the next combustion comes that much sooner. But obviously, if the target is below 30%, or if there's anything around you that's below 30%, you can just Scorch off of it. That's another great thing to do while you're waiting for your next combustion. Another thing about shifting power is that sometimes it makes more sense to hold the shifting power until after your first 2 combustions instead of your first one, especially if you're like popping less on the pull. So, if you want to just hold that shifting power, maybe go into your second combustion, come out of it, and then use it, that's totally fine. It just kind of depends. It's a judgment call. But generally speaking, if you're out of resources, even if your combustion cooldown is going to be wasted, try and make sure to use that shifting power. But obviously, every encounter has kind of different mechanics going on. And if it's Mythic Plus, you can, try to use it outside of combat too. That's usually pretty good. Fire Mage is definitely one of those classes you just have to kind of get a feel for. It definitely takes some practice. And I will say hitting the target dummy is a really good way to practice, but just try to resist the urge to use Scorch too much. And in fact, sometimes whenever I'm doing tests or I'm even recording for these videos, sometimes I will be unable to resist the urge to throw in a Scorch here or there. But yeah, obviously, if you just let the rotation play out, you're going to feel the cadence of it. You just want to make sure that you're securing those hot streaks. If you get the heating up, try to turn it into the hot streak. That's really the big goal here. And then in that time between combustions, try to make use of shifting power. And if you can't use shifting power because it's on cooldown, maybe just throw in a couple fireballs in there, maybe follow up with the Phoenix Flame. Just try to be smart about how you use your resources so that whenever shifting power comes back up, you can try and blow them all really quick before the shifting power. That way you can get more value out of it. Another thing too to be aware of is Glorious Incandescence, and especially if you have a situation where like Hyperthermia is up, so you're able to just mash Pyroblast over and over and over again, and your combustion is about to be up. As long as you don't cap out on Fireblast, if you maybe just throw in a couple extra Pyroblasts and you get that Glorious Incandescence locked and loaded, it can be pretty nice to have a Glorious Incandescence at the very start of your combustion, because usually that means you're going to get a second Glorious Incandescence really, really fast, and then you can even get a third in that combustion. So that means that you're going to have a lot more Fireblasts in your combustion. So yeah, try to have at least like one Fireblast ready before you get into that combustion. But keep in mind, if you carry in that Glorious Incandescence, you can kind of count that as like an additional Fireblast for that combustion. For AoE, we are running this build here. Again, just to remind you, we are picking up the Flamestrike talent because there's really no cost to that, since Convection is not really worth picking up. And we're picking up Blast Zone and buffing our Living Bomb and our Ignites here. And a lot of people are asked this question all the time. It's, when do I Flamestrike? So here's a chart that I use some sim data to basically build using this this setup right here. The red line is Sunfury, blue is Frostfire, which we're not covering in this video, but basically what I want to point out to you here is that if the pole is shorter, it actually changes when this overlap happens, right? This intersection. So you can see it here happening at 4 targets on the 40-second sim. It's actually getting more damage out of using Flamestrike here, as opposed to Pyroblast just cleaving your Ignites. And then if you do a 5-minute sim, it goes up to 5 targets here. So the answer is just at 5 targets, you're going to want to use Flamestrike over Pyroblast. It's about 5% better, and it's going to keep being better by an increased amount for every target you add. So you can see like the difference here. This line is Pyroblast. So right here at 6 targets, right? If we look at this intersection here, it's a little bit over 5%, and then 7, it's going to be roughly like 10%, 8. It's just going to keep going down. So yeah, this is the idea. Basically, as the pole gets shorter, it becomes more valuable to use Flamestrike. Obviously, if mobs don't have like the full time for their Ignites to take out, it's more important to use Flamestrike just like to blanket damage. But sometimes it's more important to prioritize just damage into the main target to just make the pole go faster. But I will say, I personally will be using Flamestrike at 5 targets, unless there's like a really good reason not to. In AoE, you just simply use Flamestrike at cursor macro instead of doing Pyroblast. That's really it. You just sub one out for the other. So you're using Flamestrike as your spinner, and then everything else is pretty much following the same logic. The only difference I would say is that in Mythic Plus, you can kind of plan things between pulls. So stuff like shifting power or like carrying over Spellfire Spheres into the next pull is something that you can do. Spellfire Spheres, you can also like start it up before the key begins. You can get to 5. I don't know if you really want to go through that much trouble, but it would be better for your damage if you start with higher Spellfire Spheres, right? Because then you can increment to the Burden of Power and then the Glorious Incandescence right away, and you're basically set. And yeah, in AoE though, the only big thing is like, even if you're not in Execute, you want to use Scorch, like in your opener, to precast and to turn your Combustion and Fireblast and then Flamestrike Q from that, double Flamestrike. You want to use Scorch because Scorch is faster, and the opportunity cost of like spending this time casting a Fireball is just like less worth it in AoE. But yeah, obviously be really, really vigilant about like additional targets going below 30% in AoE, because that time that you spend between combustion, it's really good if you can like start scorching a couple targets. And also it's really good if you can do like what I'm doing right here, where I have the Glorious Incandescence already in my pocket and I'm already building up Spellfire Spheres, because what you can do is have the Glorious Incandescence, put the spheres at 5 as long as you don't cap on Fireblast. So if you're like really aggressive about spinning Fireblast early on, and then you get the Glorious Incandescence, you can carry this into the Combustion with a bunch of spheres already ready to go. And you can basically have like 2 Glorious Incandescents back to back, which is really nice. But yeah, so right here, I have the Hot Streak, and I use my Combustion here, and I'm going to Flamestrike. And after that, double Flamestrike, right? And then Fireblast. And then, you know, go through these 2 Glorious Incandescents. There's my second one, right? I've already had 2 Glorious Incandescents this Combustion. It definitely helps. You get a lot more damage this way because you just get like a lot more Flame Strikes. But yeah, that's the idea, is just basically play it like single target. Just use @cursor macro, and then keep your mouse situated on where the targets are so that your Flame Strikes go where your mouse is. It's kind of annoying to have to like keep your mouse in a certain spot on your screen, but it's much better than using, you know, Pyroblast if you have like a really, really high target count. And using anything else like @player macros is just out of the question, right? Just use @cursor. That's the way to go. And whatever you do, if you see this green circle whenever you press Flamestrike, that is very bad because you can't queue the Flamestrike with this green circle. So you need to use the macro, and the macro will be in the description. It's just basically @cursor. So like with the macro, if you press Flamestrike, it's just going to start casting, as opposed to if you don't have the macro, it's going to show the circle, and this is going to slow you down a lot and make your damage go down considerably. Also, make sure in Mythic Plus that whenever you're popping your Combustion, that you have enough time in the pull to actually get through your whole Combustion and your Hyperthermia. So if you're, you know, sitting on your Combustion still and the pack is already dead and you have nothing to hit, basically you can't farm back to next Combustion. And it effectively would be like the same thing as if you died during Combustion. You just like lost all that time. It's going to set you back. You're going to have to wait like a minute and a half and basically be doing AFK damage until that Combustion comes back. So be really careful about that. Also for Mythic Plus, a strong on-use trinket like this House of Cards is really good because it just gives you a lot more damage. Obviously, there's other on-use trinkets you can use too. You can even experiment maybe with double on-use trinkets. But yeah, generally speaking, I would not really recommend these for raid. But in Mythic Plus, since you spend more time like running between pulls and having time for your cooldowns to come back up, and since a lot of your damage is in that Combustion, it can be really, really nice to have some on use. So yeah, definitely having like a, you know, a big trinket to use with your Combustion whenever you're popping Lust and doing like a crazy pull is going to greatly increase your overall damage. Now, if you're looking for more information or background on abilities, looking for rotational tips, best in slot gear, all of this can be found on my Wowhead guide, and I'm going to make sure to keep this up to date. This is the best way for me to make changes if things get tuned, or if new things are found, and have it be updated without having to make a whole new video. And it also helps me keep the duration of the video down. So definitely make sure to check out the Wowhead guide, especially for like Weakauras and add-ons. That can also be a great place to get those. All right, and that's going to be it for today. So if you like this video, if you got to the end, a like would be super appreciated. And if you want to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.